Hey, so I really liked Trickster mode. I think it's one of the best acts in Homestuck because it takes the alpha kids, whose chronic issue is never speaking to each other about anything ever, and says, okay, fuck it, now they're telling everyone everything they think all the time. And given how watching someone suffer is the least entertaining thing in the world, literally I would rather soon enjoy watching paint dry and growing grass than watch someone do nothing at all but angst forever, Trickster mode is a very nice rebuttal to all of that. Okay, so in the beginning stages of Act 6, it's made clear that Jane has the hots for Jake, as does literally everyone else. Seriously, this kid cannot catch a break. But when Roxy, the best alpha kid out of all of them, tells her, hey girl, Dirk's about to make a move, to go tell him you like him, she panics and decides to bomb her own chances. The opportunity for her to backpedal goes up in smoke, as Jake explains that if she had asked him out, he probably would have said yes, but he's still relieved that she didn't. Now, this sounds sort of dickish, that's a running theme with Jake. He's silly and goofy and occasionally says the completely stupid and incorrect thing. But I can understand why he would say this, for two reasons. One, at the beginning of Act 6, all the alpha kids are either 15 or 16, where the trademark teenage angst bullshit is at its highest, so, he's going to say irrational things and do irrational things. And two, he's ace. In retrospect, and even in the moment, it's clear that he values he and Jane's friendship strictly on a platonic basis. And later on, it becomes clear that he's just not down with romance. So yeah, Jane starts panicking more and berates herself for being stupid and not just telling him as he continues on and on. Now, despite being distraught over thoroughly smashing her chances with Jake to bits, she eggs him on to go and date Dirk because she likes her friends and wants them to be happy. More specifically, she really likes Dirk. Their friendship is so nice. However, she's still kind of dumb about it and her emotions are all over the place, so she's stressing the fact that she just got friend-zoned, which would be obvious to anyone except Jake. Anyway, they all enter and then we skip ahead to Jane's birthday. Yes, the shift is that jarring. By this point, Jake and Dirk aren't all that steady. Dirk is overbearing and clingy, and Lil Hal isn't making things better. Aerosol, who couldn't be fucked to listen to him agonize over his rapidly deteriorating corpse of relationship, tells Jake to fuck off and talk to one of his friends about it. Jake decides to talk Jane's ear off about it for the upteenth time, after forgetting her birthday. Here's the thing, from what I can tell, this scene right here tends to make up people's minds about who was right and who was wrong in the whole Jane-Jake debacle. Some think that Jane was in the right to scream at this guy for constantly talking about his boyfriend issues and nothing else to this girl who's had a pretty obvious crush on him ever since forever. And some think that Jane went overboard and Jake's behavior wasn't malicious or self-centered, but just sheer obliviousness. But I think it's bits of both. Make no mistake, Jane had the right to yell at Jake to shut the fuck up, because can you imagine having to hear someone go on and on about how their relationship is so hard and it might have to end and woe is you and blah 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 for 5 months and they don't talk to you about anything else? Yeah, she's a bit selfish with it, but she's still mostly in the right. And Jake can be self-centered, but he's also an oblivious moron. And he needs a wake-up call. Even if this one was rude, it was still necessary. Thing is, though, Jane still doesn't spit it the fuck out, putting into perspective just what the fucking issue is. Jane liked him, and he never found out, and he gets the wrong idea here, just pissing her off even more. Like I said before, this is the core issue with the alpha kids. No one talks to each other about their issues at all. At times it feels almost contrived. The plot only moves forward because no one speaks and things just get worse, or people misspeak and things just get worse. Jake probably would have understood if Jane had just gone, I've liked you this whole time, that's why it's been especially irritating to me. Because that's exactly what he thinks is going on, just with Dirk instead of him. Roxy tries to cheer her up because that's her bestie, with little knowledge of the situation. She kind of fudges it by stating that after Dirk Jake is no more, she could probably smooch up Jake. Jen gets pissed at this because she still sort of likes the guy, but doesn't fly off the handle because she's not nearly as fed the fuck up with Roxy as she is with Jake. Well, I mean, she kinda does. She apologizes right after, but it still goes to show just how emotionally raw she is. Anyway, she absconds, Roxy gets nabbed, Dirk and Hal have a feelings jam, and then they really pile on the feels when Jane gets a double dose of stabs to the heart. Actually, Jane's been through a fucking lot. One of her friends is probably dead and she knows this. She's under the impression that her dad might also be dead. She's surrounded by dead people. She just got sexually harassed by the worst 12-year-old in existence, who may have murdered one of her friends, and regularly threatens to murder all of her other ones. And her tiara top just tried to violently mind control her. Taking all of that into perspective, it makes sense why she'd want to be completely and totally alone at the moment. This is so much pain, and it's all on her brain, and what doesn't help matters is that she's been given a gift on her birthday from a probably deceased friend, and another that's been re-gifted by a dude she doesn't want to talk to, from another dude who just sexually harassed her. Actually, looking back, I think Hussie really ramped up the trauma in the pages leading up to the next act, possibly to make what happens next give you the impression of, is this what you wanted? Are you happy now? But she makes them, mainly because Calliope said they work better in a pair. And then... Jane goes fucking ballistic. She's on a sugar high, she looks like a candy shop just threw up on her, the trickster magic has made half the planet teem with life, and then she blasts the fuck off. This is what emotional, tonal, and visual whiplash feels like. Jane descends onto Jake like a hot pink gem-encrusted vulture and starts spewing out all of her feelings, saying she loves him, saying she always has, asking to have a million babies, and saying that she's feeling better than she ever has. She feels so utterly, completely, and entirely Caucasian. Andrew Hussie was a little bitch for changing the Caucasian joke to peachy. Caucasian was just objectively funnier. All of this is played for a joke at the audience's expense, but Trickster mode is like the potato chip, invented out of malice but completely delicious. They say they've solved all their personal problems forever, which they haven't, but they've made some progress toward that. Jake now knows the thing that Jane has been choosing not to tell him for 5 months. They're actually fucking speaking to each other. So the two of them descend onto Roxy like a pair of polyamorous toucans and ask her to marry Jake along with Jane. And also CD is here. The sex is just automatically better by him being here. At this point, Roxy is scared shitless and hasn't been able to reach anyone who can help her. So who does she call? Dirk? Calliope? Ghostbusters? J.G. Wentworth? Saul Goodman? No, she doesn't. She calls Hitler. She calls fucking Fish Hitler to get her out of this mess. When I first read this, I was in stitches. It was so goddamn funny. Even now as I'm typing this, and probably as I'll be reading this, I cannot contain my giggles. She dialed up the bitch who killed everyone to save her from her LSD-tripping friends. Condi logs the fuck out and leaves Roxy to deal with this shit on her own. And she gets pumpkined and then gets crunked. The kids decide to go and get hammered, really the only downside to this act, and all agree that polyamory is tight and she should kiss Jane. Something I've been neglecting to mention is the Sprites place in all this. See, Aerosol contains Eridan, who murdered Feferi, which is now part of Fetheta. If you've read Homestuck, you didn't need me to explain that. And after like a really fucking long time of them not speaking, they're finally in the same room together, and Eridan apologizes. It's weird and it's all over the place, but he says his sorries, and I like that. See, this is what's so good about Trickster mode. Not only are the Alpha Kids talking to each other, but so is everyone else. Then they all descend onto Dirk like a gang of Technicolor horses, and Rocky tells Dirk she's had a crush on him since forever. Big shocker there. Dirk says that blurting confessions doesn't constitute the end of a character arc, which it doesn't. See, Trickster mode isn't good because it puts all of the Alpha Kids' issues to bed. It's good because it inches those arcs forward after a fucktillion years of them just hanging there. Arqueus tells him to just go with it since he'll never be happy otherwise. Dude, what the fuck? This popped up before, but Dirk hates himself quite a bit. Both himself and his mind, and himself and his shades. And unless I forgot something, this doesn't really get wrapped up, at least not in Homestuck. I haven't read much of the epilogues or beyond canon, but I do know that neither of them end well for Dirk, so both in this one work and in continuations, the arc is boring as shit, because let's watch them get worse and let's watch them die are both weak endings to an I hate myself plotline. Anyway, Dirk suffers more and it's kind of boring and sad. And then he breaks up with Jake over their lack of communication. Oh dear, if it isn't the consequences of literally never fucking speaking to each other at all laid bare for everyone to witness. If only something could have prevented this. Moving on, Arqueus, despite being a complete mess of a creature, apologizes to Nepeta for his inability to protect her. He valued his race play over survival. Good gods, this boy need a fucking therapist. However, Arqueus and Aerosol both care too much about their respective morals getting confused and uncomfortable that Fetheta explodes. You know, this scene and the one before it would have been better if Hussie wasn't so committed to the unfunny joke that Fetheta only ever speaks when the camera is off. The kids do Christmas. By the way, did you know that every track in this act fucking slaps? They make some weapons, learn some lore, and do some Christmas even more, and then it's over. And Caliborn is mad, with good reason too. In the aftermath of Act 6, Act 5, Act 2, Hussie posits that Caliborn, Calliope, and by extension the audience, wanted the kids to just completely delete their issues and never have to look at them again. See, I wasn't exactly in the fandom 12 years ago, so I'm not sure how true this is, but if it wasn't, Hussie's just being pissy, and if it was, he's still being pissy because showing the wrong people that you heard their criticism isn't how you write a story. Despite doing the exact opposite of what they asked, that being for the Alpha Kids to just get over everything in an hour, he still listened to them and had their thoughts impact the story for literally no reason at all, except for the fact that it allowed him to say fuck you to people whose critiques don't matter. From what I can gather from this Reddit thread, people consider it to be him saying, this is what you want, and this isn't the story I'm writing. Their issues will be resolved in time. Slight problem, they weren't. With the exception of Roxy, the Alpha Kids get killed off and retconned into oblivion and then brought back for the final boss and a powwow with Calliope and Dave respectively, which was enjoyable to see, but didn't really clear the air between Jane and Jake, especially after the last thing she said to him was, I'm going to turn you into my husband slave. I don't think Jake talks to Jane or Dirk after the retcon. At all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. After Hussie tells Caliborn that he can't just skip to the end of the arc, the Alpha Kids talk about their issues and it's kinda good. and bad. Dirk and Jane's friendship remains a really good element of the story, and it's nice to see them talk about how they were both pining for this one dude, and how their situation would have never ended well because everyone here is monogamous. Maybe it could have just been them thinking it had to be monogamous, but whatever. Friendship wins. They also state that they should have talked about it earlier, but at the same time, Jake and Jane just do not fucking talk to each other until she's in an impaired state where she cannot talk to him openly and honestly because Fischler said no. And that might as well count for the rest of the comic because they do not talk to each other at all after game over. Roxy begrudgingly listens to Jake shit all over himself, agreeing to pass along an apology for Jane. Jane shuts everything down by saying they'll talk later, which they never really do. Jake also wants to apologize to Dirk, but seemingly having learned nothing, asks Roxy to do it for him as well. And Roxy doesn't want to talk to him either because she just relapsed and feels embarrassed, so she passes the message through Jane to Dirk. Jake begs for her attention, and she spills about how wrong it was for her to pine after a gay guy, even though Dirk was the only other human alive at the time. Okay, look, this entire stretch would be better if the chats were all in a group, or if they had actually just talked to each other. This is why it's only kind of good. We're getting everyone's thoughts on things, but it's all being expelled to people who aren't the ones they should be talking to, because everyone thinks the one they're having problems with just does not want to talk to them. Which isn't the case, and it's frustrating to watch. So much good character work is being done here, and it would be better if they were expressing their feelings about each other to each other. Imagine how beautiful Dirk's confession about Roxy would be if he'd actually said it directly to her. How much air would be crystal clear if Jake and Jane talked about their relationship. If Dirk and Jake talked about their breakup. My god, all of this would be great if they just spoke. And that, beyond the humor, is why Trickster mode is so great, even if it was made to hurl mud at critics who demanded a worse story. Because it did what Hussie had been neglecting to do for so long, have the alpha kids tell each other things. And yeah, it might be realistic for a bunch of insecure 16-year-olds to never talk to each other about their feelings, but realism can make a story worse. And if that's what happened here, that's what made it worse. Story becomes infinitely better when people share their thoughts. It's evident with the Sprites. Aerosol's apology genuinely made me look more fondly on Aridin as a character. Granted, he went from a 4 to about a 6 out of 10, but that's still an improvement. But when they don't talk, and they just sit there, well, it's like Caliborn said, they don't get shit done. And that's boring. Watching people sit around and do nothing but angst is boring. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, tell me why. And if you didn't, tell me how to improve. I'm Carb, and have a good day.